Shri Harsh Mariwala, Past President FICCI, Sachin Menon, Shri Varut Khanna, all special invitees who have come here, my dear colleagues from the board. It is a great pleasure for me to be present here today to be in your midst. At the outset, I would like to thank FICCI for having organized the session and inviting me to share my thoughts regarding the milestones we have crossed in the journey of GST and the preparation for the road ahead. As you know, we have recently completed 1 year of GST. It's been a long journey. And this is indeed an appropriate moment to pause and think about our journey so far and also to ponder about the road ahead. As you are aware, GST has brought a transformational change in the indirect taxation system. A bewildering array of almost 17 taxes and 23 cesses has merged into a single tax. The cascading of taxes has been mitigated, and GSTN has provided a single interface to taxpayers for all business processes. From the consumer's point of view, this has been the biggest advantage because there has been a reduction in the overall tax burden. For launching GST in India, on the one hand, it was imperative to look at the best practices, international practices. And on the other hand, it was also equally important to ensure that the fiscal autonomy of the states is not compromised. As you know, about 140 countries worldwide have implemented GST or VAT in some way or the other. The overall design of GST has been quite varied across various nations, depending on the macroeconomic situation or the political situation prevailing at the time of introduction of GST. Among countries which have successfully implemented GST, Brazil, Russia, and Argentina have independent VAT at the center as well as the states. This dual structure poses the problem of differences in base and tax rates, which can undermine compliance. Australia, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland have VAT, which is levied and administered by the center, while revenues are shared with the states. This takes away the fiscal autonomy of the states. So it is very important that the optimum design of GST, which poses a lot of challenges, should be such that it suits the Indian scenario. The landscape of the GST laws and procedures that have finally evolved over the past 1 year has several unique features which I thought would be important to highlight in this gathering. The very first thing is the landmark achievement in fiscal federalism. The introduction of GST has heralded a new era of cooperative fiscal federalism in India. The institutionalization of GST Council is a trailblazer of sorts for a closer and a more vibrant cooperation between central and state governments. The debates and deliberations in the evolution of GST law and procedure has been underpinned by consensus and cooperation at the highest level. The political will, sagacity, and maturity across the nation has been and will continue to be the hallmark of this mammoth reform. The second important aspect I would like to highlight is that the journey from the informal to the formal sector. The introduction of GST has spurred the movement of several segments of the informal sector into the formal sector, thanks to the broad-based input tax credit availability. The entities higher up in the supply chain have been nudging the smaller entities, smaller suppliers into the GST ecosystem to enable seamless flow of tax credits, thus ensuring a visible role for the SMEs in the formal economy. The GST compliant supply chain will eventually play a very crucial role in the days to come. Another very important distinguishing feature is the fact that we have a unique uniform single rate. Though there are two components of tax, CGST and SGST, there is a single rate pan-India, a uniform rate across the country. So multiple rates and tax arbitrage among states has been virtually eliminated. From the consumer's point of view, transparency in GST ensures that the exact amount of tax one is paying on any goods or services is known very clearly. Moreover, with the removal of the many exemptions which were part of the old system, distortions in the tax structure have also been eliminated. Moreover, the businesses have now been able to base the commercial considerations or decisions on not necessarily on tax, but for other purposes. Very important matter once more is the fact that we have a single tax authority. Earlier, you had a maze of taxes, a plethora of tax authorities. Now, with GST, as against multiple tax authorities earlier, a taxpayer is in a state deals with a single tax authority, the center or the state. I must mention here that this is a very complex matter, but the principles of distribution of taxpayers between central and state authorities were amicably settled and decided and settled by the GST Council. Following this, the tax authorities in each state have very efficiently accomplished this division of taxpayer with the central tax authorities in a very smooth manner without any inconvenience to the taxpayer. From the consumer point of view, the reduction in tax burden, it has been ensured that the net incidence of tax on any goods or services is much less or same which was there earlier. This principle of equivalence has been followed and the rate of taxes have been carefully calibrated in GST. Importantly, even after the implementation, wherever it was felt that some rationalization is required, the rates were reduced depending on the necessity. GST is thus a very critical change for the economy, and these highlighted aspects have brought to fore the unique features which India has adopted from the GST design point of view. As far as the government policy and the government overall economic reform agenda is concerned, GST has been playing a very crucial role. The widening of tax base and revenue buoyancy also, as you have been noticing, there has been a substantial improvement in the number of taxpayers. GST collection also is sort of stabilizing now. The other aspect is that the inflation has also been under control. Proactive measures have been taken by the in the GST law itself to ensure these aspects of are taken care of. Moreover, as far as ease of doing business is concerned, as far as Make in India is concerned, these important flagship projects of India, there have been elements in GST which are very, very critical for all these projects also. The introduction of the IT-enabled business processes for registration, payment of taxes, and filing of returns has, to a large extent, improved the ease of doing business in India. In addition, the cost efficiencies and seamless ITC credits have made GST a very competitive tax. I would also like to mention that a lot of proactive steps were taken when the GST was launched in India. I had the unique opportunity of not only being witness to the launch of GST in India, but 18 years back, I was in Melbourne. I was a student of MBA. And on 1st July 2000, I was witness to another launch of GST that was in Australia, the year 2000. So I could see that the way in which we have done, the preparations we have done is as good or even better than what could have been done elsewhere. As a student in Australia of MBA, I was close witness to the way in which GST was launched in Australia. It was called as a new tax system, NTS. And the law was almost frozen almost a year back. Systems were in place. Of course, you can't compare Australian economy or the Australian population with India. There are two different features altogether. But the way in which they went around educating the public, educating the taxpayers, educating the general community as such, Australia had done a fantastic job. And I can also say with the same confidence that whatever steps were taken by the government of India for educating, for outreach programs, for capacity building were unmatched. You would be surprised that more than 52,000 officers of the state and central governments were trained by our National Academy of Customs, Indirect Tax and Narcotics. 52,000 all over India. We had about 70,000 outreach programs for the last almost year before and after GST. 70,000 programs, outreach programs across India to propagate how important GST is and what are the various features of GST. So I think that given the Indian situation, we have done a fairly good job as far as outreach, training, capacity building, and a general perspective about GST. At the time of GST rollout, I remember there was literally a war room which was known as feedback and action room, which monitored GST implementation round the clock, almost round the clock, and it was giving feedback to the various ministries and to the highest level in the government. Subsequently, also, we have ensured that the same level of outreach and publicity and control is happening. There was a special drive from the Prime Minister's office to send very senior officers at the district level just after the launch of GST to make sure that GST in every district of India, each and every district of India, officers were sent and to make sure that the after effects of GST are monitored and feedback is given and quickly implemented. So I think this sort of a proactive, interactive method by which feedback was taken and immediately acted upon is something which is very unique and which was very necessary in the first few months. Even now we have got something called the IT grievance redressal mechanism, which has been put in place to make sure that the taxpayers' difficulties regarding IT-related matters are taken care of. So I think the overall perspective is that we have brought GST to a certain level, and this is a sort of a consolidation and a stabilization phase. We definitely know that despite whatever successes are there, the businesses in India demand for some more improvement and some more efficiency in the whole system. We are alive to it. We will definitely take steps to make sure that whatever difficulties are there, whatever problems are there, we will definitely look into it and we'll see that as soon as possible, we will be able to resolve those. In particular, I would like to tell that there was some issue regarding refund of IGST and refund of ITC. This has been taken up. We have proactively resolved most of the issues. We have in fact held several camps to sensitize the trade and the industry to make sure that they file the refund claims correctly. By and large, the problem has been solved over the few months. As far as the road ahead is concerned, I would like to stress that a lot of expectations are there, and we definitely would like to see that these are fulfilled at the earliest. A simpler tax filing regime is what most of the people demand. Rationalization of rates and a broader tax base. These are the things which I think are priority areas as far as the road ahead is concerned. A committee has been set up for return simplification, which I think will be giving very valuable suggestions and putting in place a very simpler GST return filing mechanism. As far as widening of tax base, this is under the purview of the council. You will come to know very shortly. Same with the rate rationalization, depending on what the revenue and other considerations are there, these things will be considered. So I think overall, in the last 1 year, certain issues have arisen, but we have been trying to address those issues as quickly and trying to resolve them as soon as possible. And from the taxpayers' point of view, we have been trying to ensure that their feedback is received as early as possible. So in conclusion, I would like to just say that the edifice of GST rests on four pillars. The first pillar, I would say, is the political leadership, who set aside the political differences and gave us the unparalleled constitutional amendments as well as the GST laws, which have been passed through Parliament and the state legislatures in a record time. The second, I would say, is a group of the highly committed officers of the tax administrations of both the CBIC as well as the state governments, who have burnt the midnight oil to draft the GST laws, business rules, and the IT framework. They continue to toil to resolve emerging issues in the shortest possible time. They are ably supported by the officers in the ground level in various formations across India for implementation, as well as by the officers of the across the state government also. The third pillar I would like to compliment is the consumer, who has taken this transformational change in his stride and has adapted himself to this paradigm shift, making GST truly a way of life. And fourth, and the most important pillar, ladies and gentlemen, is the taxpayer and the premier institutions like CII who represent the taxpayer. It is you who provide us valuable feedback about emerging issues and articulate the concerns of various segments of industry, which is a critical input for policy and procedural changes. Thank you.